Hello again. So this is a marigold. I'm well aware, not a sweet pea, so don't start. But the reason I'm showing you this is because this is the first year I ever tried growing any type of flower from seed, and the marigolds grew very well, and it's kind of inspired me to try and grow some more flowers for next year. One of the flowers that I've got is sweet pea, and after watching a lot of your videos, it seems sowing the sweet pea in autumn is a good idea because you end up with earlier flowers and stronger plants. So with that in mind, let's get sowing. I've ordered 2 packs of sweet pea from a well-known seed merchant here in the UK. This is the 1st of October. I've got incense mixed and I've got allspice mixed. I wonder if the flowers give off a scent like the aftershave. Never mind. Now, I've read contradictory information and I've seen some of your videos where some suggest soak them for 24 hours or 12 hours overnight or whatever. But the idea is that soaking them is a good idea. Or scratching the outer shell. And I've also seen some of your videos where you say don't do it, it's not necessary. So not being sure what to do, I've decided to go ahead and soak both of these in a bowl of water overnight. And once these have been soaked in the morning, what I'm going to do is put them in a lunchbox in damp tissue, and they will sit then on top of Zuki's vivarium, which is nice and warm. So this is the 7th of October. Let's have a look and see how the seeds are doing. It seems like a lot of them have actually sprouted. There's 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 haven't, but they'll go back in the tissue in the box on top of the vivarium and see if they come on a little bit later. These are the incense mixed. So that's pretty good, and some of them are showing what looks to be like the root, and some are showing a root and a shoot. Apparently sweet pea put out a very long taproot, and that's why it's suggested that the seeds are sown in something like loo roll or in deep root trainers, because it puts out one large taproot and then lots of lateral roots come off that taproot. And you can see there's a lot of fine, what looks like very fine hair roots just coming off that central root there. Okay, so I'm going to get these potted up now. Now this is something to keep in mind if you keep your bags outside like I do. I moved a piece of wood that was on top of this bag of perlite and I spotted some slug eggs, and I disturbed a spider who looks to be quite annoyed with me now. Sorry about that, Mr. Spider. But it made me think, the perlite I've just taken, I wonder if there's any slugs in it. And oh yes. So I'll just remove this little guy, but I'm going to have to sift a bit more carefully through that perlite to make sure there's no other little baby slugs in there. I'm surprised they're in the perlite, but hey ho, they are. So I need to just double check this, but that's something to keep in mind. There may be eggs in here which of course will hatch out, and then of course they're going to enjoy the seedlings. My thinking here of adding the perlite to the compost is that the seeds are going to sit in the little pots for quite some time, maybe 4 months before they get planted out, maybe longer. So I want the compost and the soil to drain freely but also retain the water and make sure there's plenty of air in the compost for the roots as they develop. Now I'm not really working to any particular proportions here, I'm just going by how it feels and how it looks. I'm just adding a handful at a time and mixing it in, and once it feels right and looks right, that'll do. Once the compost just feels nice and loose and light, then I think that's good enough. The other thing that I'm going to do is, because the seeds don't need anything to start life, because everything they need is contained in the seed itself. But once they put out the root and the shoot and start growing, they're going to need some nutrients. Now there will be some nutrients in the compost, but again, because they're going to be sitting here for a couple of months, I'm going to add some extra little nutrient. And this is a bottle of slow release plant food that I got free with something a couple of years ago. It's never been opened. So I'm just going to add some of this into it. And I have no chance of ever reading what those instructions say. The print is too small, so I'm just going to put some in. If you're never sure of quantities, just put some. Go with some. So that's it. I'm just going to sprinkle some into the compost. That'll do. Mix that in thoroughly, and then we'll start sowing the seeds. So I haven't got any deep root trainers, and I haven't got lots and lots of loo roll centres, so I'm going to use what I have got, which is 3-inch pots. I'm just going to fill these up to the mark under the rim. I've got about 40 seeds in total to sow, so I'll just show you these two and then speed up the rest. These are the old spice. This one has a root and a shoot. So I'm just going to make a hole maybe about 1/2 inch deep in the center of the pot and drop it in. And again, maybe it's something I should be a bit more concerned about than I usually am, but I tend not to be too bothered about which way is up, because as I've said before, I have every confidence in the roots finding their way down and the shoots finding their way up. And it's quite a small seed, so it isn't going to struggle. And as you can see there, the root ended up on the top and the shoot ended up on the bottom. But it's a tiny seed, so the shoot isn't going to have to work very hard to turn itself around. And then I'm just going to fill in the hole. I'm not going to pack that down very much, because when I water it, that will close in any gaps. What I don't want to do is damage the root or the shoot. So I'm not going to put any pressure on this when I fill it in. I'm just going to gently pour the soil on top. And then when I water it, any gaps that remain, the compost will fold in on itself, so that'll solve that issue. And here we are, 20 pots with the old spice sown. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the incense mixed. All I want to do now is give them a good watering in. And when I have that done, what I'm going to do, again, because these will sit in a greenhouse or under plastic of some sort for several months, I don't want that green mold grown on top of the pots. So to keep that at bay, what I'm going to do is just add some vermiculite on top. If you ever have a bucket in your hand, make sure the bucket faces the camera so that nobody can see what you're doing with your other hand. It's called blocking the view. And you can see the money I spent on film school was really well worth it. It was a great investment. But anyhow, all I'm doing is I'm just putting a very thin layer of vermiculite on top of the pots. And that's them done. So these will go into this little greenhouse. As you can see, it's already steaming up. Here we are now on the 16th of October, and they're all poking their heads up above the top of the soil. And they're getting a bit leggy. I think I'm going to have to do something about this. I think the second tray, the one underneath the tray at the top, is getting less light. And you can see they're leaning towards the door, and they're also quite leggy. So that's not good. I'm going to have to rethink where these guys are going to stay for the next few months. But that's it, from the 1st of October to the 16th of October, 16 days. There's 40 sweet pea poking their little heads above the top of the pots. The next thing I'm going to try and do now is prepare some of these chili plants for winter. I'm going to try and keep them over winter and see if they'll regrow next year. So that's the next thing to do. And just to end this video, if you saw the short little video I put up on the easy way to sow tomatoes, this is the tomato plant that was growing in the pavement, literally in a crack in the pavement. And it's now producing lovely little tomatoes. And in that same video I showed you a spinach plant, and here's the spinach plant. What can you say? As always, thanks for watching. Bye for now.